So quiet.
Welcome to a brand new UTS Startups Confessions. Welcome. So, my name is Aaron Gan. I'm the Inspiration Manager here at UTS Startups. We have a very special guest today who will be introducing in a moment. And our job at UTS Startups is to inspire a community of people who want to start their own businesses, start their own startups, and find out what are the things that enable success. To share some of those successes and to share the journey, we have Vanessa from Chuu Nutrition. Please welcome her to the stage.
Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. So, actually, could we grab one or two of those bottles and we'll put them up here just so we can showcase them?
Sounds good.
So while those are coming up, and this is so that everyone who's online and watching the stream can kind of see those products there. Tell us in 10 seconds a bit about your startup.
Yeah, so Chuu Nutrition, we're a company that is all about making healthy habits fun, and we're building Australia's favourite line of sugar-free vitamin gummies.
Okay, so tell us about this. Gummies are something that we're seeing everywhere. They seem to be very, very popular. Tell us a bit about that journey. Like, what makes yours special?
Yeah.
And you mentioned sugar-free. Is that like something which is unique?
Absolutely. So, as you have mentioned, gummies are becoming far more popular these days, especially recently. I don't know if you guys would have seen Swiss launched their new line of vitamin gummies recently, but our journey started around almost 2 years ago, and it's actually a story from my exchange program, which I went on with UTS, and I went to the US, and in the US, like their products in the health space, they're so much more innovative. They've got so much more innovation and growth in that category, and back in 2018, gummies were quite a big trend in the US as well. And we didn't really have much happening in Australia. We had like Nature's Way and a few of those like kids vitamin gummies, but we didn't have anything targeted at adults. And at the time, I was just thinking like, why not? Like, why don't adults get to have fun with healthy habits, right? Like, why do all the kids get to have the fun and that's it? So I decided that I would want to find a formula that was suitable for adults and that would still be enjoyable and easy to integrate into your everyday routine. So that's why we went for sugar-free. At the time, I was also looking into plant-based, so vegan and gluten-free. And so we found this formula, worked on it for about a year before launch, and here we are.
Amazing. So we'll dive into where you are at the moment. We can see the products here. That's quite exciting. I've had a variety of different gummies, the apple cider vinegar, the magnesium ones, and I think the beetroot ones.
Oh yeah.
which was surprisingly delicious. But I haven't had a sugar-free one until today, which is exciting. But tell us, so you mentioned that you were here at UTS, you finished and you graduated, and then you jumped into your career. Who were you before you started this startup journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did the BIT program at UTS, so IT co-op. I spent a lot of my early career in corporate, and I was lucky to have a lot of corporate experience early, even when I was still at uni because of the co-op situation. So then when I graduated, I went straight into a grad program at Deloitte, and so I went like hard on the corporate like really quickly. Oh. So I started my first corporate job when I was 18 at Macquarie Bank. So I got a lot of the taste of corporate quite early in my career, and so then I probably realized earlier than most other people that it wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so I think that the big change, like the big pivot for me was during COVID, when we all started to go remote, and then realizing that maybe there's more to just life than corporate work. Even though I say that corporate was a very formative part of my career, and still like I use a lot of that experience today, but yeah, there's more to it than that.
Yeah, and you mentioned, so you had been doing that corporate career, and your exchange was the thing that inspired you. You went overseas, you saw the gummies, and you were like, this is for us. Now they can have special gummies over there that we can't quite have yet.
Yeah.
But what was that like as you were starting up? Like, what came to mind as you were like, hey, I think I'm gonna give this a go? Because it's not everyone, in fact, no one has done it quite like this before. What was that like as you first got onto the bandwagon?
So it's a good question. I think a lot of the benefit of having the experience from both corporate and then also overseas in the US was that you get to see that Australia is actually quite small, and the way that we do things here seems like a microcosm sometimes. Like it feels like this is the whole world, but until you leave, you don't realize that people are doing things like way beyond like what we are used to here. And it really, but at the same time, they're still human. So then it really broadens your horizons about what's possible. And so when I first decided to start the product, like it was the first of its kind in Australia. So our tagline is Australia's first sugar-free apple cider vinegar gummy. And yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, well, it paints the picture, right? And what were your thoughts about it? Did you think it was going to be easy? Did you think it was going to be difficult? Like,
sure.
what were some of those just initial thoughts?
Let me embarrass myself here because I genuinely thought this was going to be so easy. I was like, I've got the best product. No one else has seen this before. We're the first in Australia. Like, literally, like, I'm a millionaire. I'm already a millionaire in my head. This is going to go to the moon. And then I got humbled so quickly, that I can't even, it's crazy. So
a specific moment, what's the gist?
It genuinely was. So I had been working on the product and the formulation for about a year before I launched it in June of 2021. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, I'm going to like put the website live. This is going to happen. Like all of the PR is going to go out, and I've got the agency ready. Australia's first.
Can't lose.
Yeah, can't lose. The ads are going. Like the social media was going. The like influencers were lined up. Like everything was. Yeah, the website, everything looked great. And then I pressed like online, and nothing happened. Like literally nothing happened. I stood there. And I was like, what's going on here? And then very quickly realized, well, slowly but also quickly, as I started getting humbled by reality, that you kind of, it's hard, it's one thing to put your effort into something, and then it's another thing to convert customers. They're two very different things. And so that early stage was so much naivety, and so much thinking that just because you have a good product and good branding and because you're a passionate entrepreneur, that everything's going to be fine. And it's half of the story. It's half the story.
Because that's and here's the thing, right? So first of all, like clearly, like great job by doing that and discovering that in real time. Right? Because so many of us we get ideas and we think it's going to be amazing, or we think it's going to not work. And either way, there's no action. So, you figured out some things in reality, however painful that might have been. In that space, like, what did you learn? Like, well, first of all, like, did you figure, like, clearly you've been making sales, you've been generating revenue, and you've now been going for 2+ years. What did you learn from that moment? Like, what was the thing that started getting you the customers?
So that's
especially
a really
given
good question.
all that build-up.
Yeah.
Influencers, media, PR. First ever.
Exactly. So I guess the journey now is quite significantly different. My mindset now towards business and the things that I've learned in the last almost 2 years is like, I don't know how I could have learned this without having the business first. If I didn't start, I would have never learned this. I didn't know what I didn't know until now. There's no textbook on entrepreneurship. There is, even speaking to different founders will give you a bit of a taste of it, but when they say it's going to be hard, you don't know what that feels like until like everything hits the fan and like you don't know what to do, because at the same time we're all young people, like we're all, especially for a first-time founder, there's no manual, you don't know what to do. And then the other thing that I've learned is because there's no manual, that also means that there's technically no right answer. There is no one correct answer, there's no one correct way to execute an idea. You actually have to just pick something and go for it, because there is 1,000,001 different ways that you can make it work. You just have to commit to one and get it done. Because the really corny line, whether or not if you think that you can do it or you think that you can't do it, you're correct. So if you believe that you can is one thing, but you have to choose to commit to one strategy and actually just take action, because I was a very big over-optimizer, like trying so hard to do the right thing, especially with my corporate training as well. I wasn't, bit of context, like I was a consultant. So speaking to executive leadership and like speaking to C-suite, like you're not allowed to make mistakes. You can't turn up like a draft slide and be like, hey, like what do you think of this? It had to be perfect. You would get penalized big time if you weren't absolutely on the dot every time. So having that corporate training, you almost have to completely 180 when it comes to entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship, before you're ready, before you know what you're doing, you have to act. Like you need to do things before you're ready, and that's how you know you're doing it correctly. Because you're never going, if you feel like you have the right answer, you're already too late. You have to execute before you're ready.
Right, and like these are such valuable insights, and it's not always obvious in the moment. Like one of the things that we talk about at UTS Startups is, what are the things that enable success? And I can hear that, the taking the action was one of them. Inside of that taking the action, like there's like a lot of people often ask, like, which action do I take? What order do I take it in? Like, what's the steps? What's the formula? And then you've just said, there is no formula, there is no blueprint. So what are the things that really supported you in those times? Because like, it can feel sometimes like there's this like, okay, I'm here out there, but we also see that you've come through it. So what do you think if you had a look, like what are the experiences or the specific moments that enabled this success that we've got now?
So it's a good question. The things that you would do, if there was a formula, and maybe to put a bit of context around what I just said before, because even though there's no one correct answer, there are definitely very key actions that you can take that will be more valuable at the beginning of your journey than the others. So even though there's not one right answer, I would encourage anyone that's looking for what to do first. Two principles. And I wish that I knew this sooner. I wish I knew this at the beginning of my journey. And also just give a bit of context as well, because it's a product-based startup, I did the very not intelligent thing, the very young, ambitious founder thing of like going all in and investing in myself and just kind of like, all or nothing approach, meaning that I invested in inventory before I kind of started doing everything else. And rule number one is try and find traction before you invest in inventory. Before you put money towards the business, find your market first. It's much easier, don't do what I did, it's much easier to find an audience and then sell them exactly what they want instead of making a product and then finding the audience that wants it. So isolate your audience first, find who you're creating for, find which problem you're solving, and then invest in it. And that's not theoretical. You can actually test this in the market before you invest any money in a product. So you can start an Instagram page, start a blog, start anything that's free, literally free. Start posting about it, engaging with people in the community, get traction first, and then launch your product. Oh my goodness, that would have been so much easier. And I didn't do that. So that's one learning. And then the second thing that I think that's very important for entrepreneurship, especially at the beginning, is understand the concept of leverage early in your career. So there's action and then there's leverage. There's different types of actions that you can take. If they all take the same amount of time, leverage is the thing that's going to make your work and your effort like the most high return on your time as possible. Alex Hormozi has a great podcast about it. Just understand the concept of leverage as early as possible, and that will transform how you do things.
So, in a little while, we're going to put to the audience Q&A, and we're going to turn off the live stream. So live stream audience and recorded audience will turn off those cameras. So if you've got questions, like start thinking about them. But, thanks for taking us through that journey. Like after those 2 years or 3 years, because the formulation was going on back then, what does Chuu Nutrition look like now? So you've come through those things. Here we are. We've got product right here. I tasted some before. It was delicious. And what does it look like now? And where are you going over the next couple of years with this brand?
Yeah. So when I first started, and when I launched, like around 2 years ago, Chuu was just a side hustle. It was something that I wanted to try. I wanted to dabble in entrepreneurship, and I wanted to see where it goes from there. And even though that sounds very palatable, and a lot of people say that, what that actually implies is that I was only half committed. I had one foot out the door, and thinking like, oh, my corporate job, I can always go back to that. And then I wondered why I wasn't getting traction and it wasn't working. It's because if you put half-ass effort into something, you're only going to get half-ass results. So that's since this like little side hustle project that I started for fun, it's now become something that has a vision. So I was telling you before that our I guess like our motto at Chuu is to simply make healthy habits fun. And the power behind that is that it's very simple, but it's something that we've now identified is actually very important to a lot of people. Healthy has this rep of being hard and like bothersome and like time consuming and like really hard to get into and like make you have to like try really hard to stay consistent all the time. But it doesn't have to be like that. And with our products, we want to show people and also inspire them to start thinking about health differently. We want to show you guys that it's easy and also can be fun to take care of your health and see results all at the same time. We didn't have that vision at the beginning. And now we have this message and this mission behind why we're doing what we're doing. Even though it's just a product, the product and the brand can be so much more than just the formula. It's the heart behind it that we're trying to share with everyone.
And now you've got that making healthy habits fun as at the core.
Yes.
How are people responding to that? Like, what's the difference that you've seen in the results in how people interact with you and with the products? Like, what's been that shift?
Absolutely. I think people understand much. So we took it from just a commodity, which was just a product, and now we have a brand. And the difference between a commodity and a brand is that a commodity is just the item, and a brand is what you stand for. And it's got message and meaning behind it. And people understand that now, and they resonate with the idea of making healthy fun instead of just having another product off the shelf that they buy on sale. Like, they actually love our story, they support the idea and understand what we're trying to do. And it's a universal message. So I think a lot of people agree, and a lot of people really are inspired and a little bit skeptical, but then are pretty inspired by the idea that they can actually have fun with health.
I think it's a very like powerful paradigm shift that's worth shifting. Yeah. And I love just earlier you were talking about like the immediate sort of like hiccup. Day one, press go, nothing happens. All of a sudden, what's going on? As you've grown out the business, like what are some of the other challenges that you haven't expected along the way? And what have you been learning from those processes?
All right, I'll pick a few because there's quite a lot of them. So I'll pick I think the biggest challenge that I didn't realize was finding an audience. And so that alludes to what I said before. I think when you're an ambitious startup founder, and then you've been working on your product for 6 to 12 months, and you think that it's like the bee's knees, it's the best thing ever. And it probably is the best thing ever, right? But communicating that to an audience that's willing to pay is a whole nother ball game. So I think that is one very humbling experience, and one big learning is that it's not really about how much effort you put into the branding and how much effort you put into the business. It's about how much value you provide to your consumer. And however much value you provide to them, that's how much they're willing to pay you. So if you want to make a business, you got to prioritize the value you bring to your customer. If you just want to start a brand, you can do that. But if you want to be a business, that's different. You have to understand what value you're providing to your customer. And when I started, I definitely started a brand. I started a project. I did not start a business.
Right.
And so when I thought about business, it's all the boring stuff. I think it's boring because girl math. But P&L and understanding finances, understanding profit margins. I don't know any of that. I did IT. I have an IT degree. So I didn't know how to do any of that. And that's probably not a great thing to say, but I didn't. And that's the humbling part, is you can't get away with not knowing the fundamentals. And sometimes just doing the fundamentals properly is going to get you much further than if you have the newest tech or the newest, most innovative formula. Just getting the basics down pat is a lot.
I think those business fundamentals are really worth calling out, and worth calling out that you've succeeded despite not having that degree, right? Just how many people here in this room have worry about, I don't know the actual business terminology, I don't know how to do the maths, I'm not sure about that side of things. Hands up if you're like, yeah, like I worry about that kind of thing. Yeah, right? Because in a startup community, we're not all business graduates. In fact, business graduates are typically trained up to, and that's what I am, a business graduate, trained up to work in large corporations.
Yeah.
Like that's what the training is. So unless you've done accounting, you won't know what a P&L is anyway. Or,
No idea.
like, or let alone you might know what it is, but might not know how to set it up. Where did you go to get upskilled in those places, given that you didn't have that?
I think that when it comes to upskilling for me, I was lucky to find, to answer the question, people always say networking is important. But until you start your own business, you don't realize just how important networking is. And I'm sure everyone's different in the ways that they learn, but my best way of learning is from someone explaining it to me. And you don't realize until you become a founder yourself how many other founders out there have been where you are, and therefore they're willing to help you on your journey. And so I learned so much of my business fundamentals, a lot of my operations, and a lot of those little like tactical, nifty things that I do now from other founders. And my accountant as well. But like you pretty much like getting into the habit of asking anyone what you would consider dumb questions has taught me so much more. I got over my pride. I got over the fear of looking dumb. And I was like, I am dumb. I don't know what a P&L is. Please tell me. And they told me. And now I understand things because I had someone explain it to me. If I read it on a textbook, there's no way. There's no chance. There's no chance I would understand what was going on. So leveraging other people and engaging your network, understanding from anyone that will tell you anything, just ask them questions.
Yeah, that's such good advice. And like I remember doing accounting A, not really getting it, and then starting to get the concepts like A solidly when I first started running a business. But before that, slightly, when I saw the financials for the UTS loft bar, and I'm like, oh, I can understand this in terms of staffing, in terms of people, in terms of products.
Yep.
So it became real.
Yes.
Right? And just putting aside that ego and asking the questions is a great segue to this final question before we shift, which is after having gone through this journey, what are you proud of? What are you proud of? What do you want to kind of just acknowledge for yourself and as you kind of go forwards?
I want to give credit to the me of 2 years ago that made the incredibly financially irresponsible decision of starting this business, because my lack of financial knowledge meant that if you don't know the rules of the game, you can't lose. So I didn't know the rules to finances, and therefore I couldn't lose, which means that I made a lot of bad financial decisions, and I didn't know at the time that I was making bad financial decisions. So props to the old me for going for it anyway. For going for it, because now that I have finance knowledge, I was like, yeesh, that was a bad idea. A lot of things I shouldn't have done, and a lot of investments that were kind of like outside of risk tolerance by a long way, but I did it anyway. And I think the grit that I didn't know that I had before, that has gotten me to today. Yeah, this will be an interesting piece of knowledge, but like my business genuinely should have failed last year. It technically did fail last year. The finances didn't make sense, and we had no business plan. We didn't have enough structure for it to really be considered successful. But I didn't know that I was failing, so I just kept going, and it actually worked. Like we literally I just kept grinding, and then it eventually just started to pick up. And now I look back and I'm like, how did this happen? So yeah, the grit and the grind to just get through things, and also just ignoring just blatant irresponsibility sometimes gets you a long way.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because I get what you said about irresponsibility, but there is a common sort of perception, isn't there, about what's working and what's not working. And in the moment, you can be like, let's go, yes, let's go. And then looking back, you're like, this is terrible. But that's all kind of, it's one version of revisionist history, because one other version also is like, maybe that was exactly what was needed.
You're right.
So, and I just call this out to say that it's not immediately obvious which one is true.
You're right.
And maybe both of them are true.
I absolutely think that if I had known Well, if I had thought too logically before and I relied on pure facts and didn't think about the journey and as a whole, and I wasn't so like naive, we wouldn't be where we are today. And what that means is essentially if you just keep going, you either win or you learn.
That's right.
And if you don't give up, honestly, something will happen one day. And the things that have happened to me along the way, I could give you like a story about this some other time, but
maybe in the off-stream.
Maybe
Q&A.
in the off-stream, but essentially where we started was just an Amazon e-commerce business with one product, and that was all the vision that there was. And now today we are in over 300 retail stores across the nation. We are #1 ranked on Amazon in our category, and we're like about to launch a new product. And that's 2 years in the making. Like it took 2 years to scale up to this point. You don't hear this side of things often because technically I haven't got the typical startup founder success story yet, but it's almost there. It's coming to us just in a lot longer time frame than you usually hear on social media and on Instagram Reels, right? Everyone's blowing up in like 18 months. It's possible to make it in the long term as well. You just don't hear those stories as often.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. We're going to leave it there for the online group. So for the people who are online, thank you so much for listening in. Every single Friday, we've got these interviews with our fantastic founders, people sharing, what are the enablers of success. And if you come in live, you'll also get access to the special off-camera, off-stream, spicy Q&A, which is about to happen. So for our people who are viewing online, please join me, and everyone here, please join me in thanking our guest, Vanessa. Thank you very much.